The headline of the first round of the draft will be what, in your estimation?
I have this suspicion that we're going to get 3 quarterbacks taken in the first 3 picks.
Okay.
I get the sense that, the talk about Stroud not going to Houston is smoke, and that it's fake. Even if it's just barely out there. And once those 2 guys, Bryce Young, I think going first, and then CJ goes, I just think that there's going to be a bit of a panic from the teams that need quarterbacks. And they're going to be looking at Indianapolis at 4 and saying to themselves, we've got to jump them. Mm-hmm. So whether it's Indy going up 1 spot or someone jumping in there at that 3 spot with Arizona, I think someone's going up to get Anthony Richardson, and I think that's going to be the headline of night 1.
Richardson is the guy.
That's
what
right.
You're saying.
That's right.
What makes you think that?
His upside is just is so high. I'm going to give you some of my stuff, so you're going to have to hear this twice.
You know what? I'll act like, oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. Or you know me, I'll say, I've heard that on the Rich Eisen Show before. Right. You know me. I don't mind self-promoting, but have at it.
So quarterbacks in the draft, in some way, are like Rubik's Cubes. And you've got to figure out 2 things about the Rubik's Cube. How good is it once it's figured out? Right. So once it's unlocked, what is the potential? What's the ceiling? You can throw out all the cliches. And then the other part, though, and this is the more difficult part, is how many turns of the Rubik's Cube is it going to take for it to become finished or close to finish?
Yes, sir.
Everybody would like a Rubik's Cube that has a high ceiling. Here's the interesting part. I also believe everybody wants an unfinished Rubik's Cube. So that you can't just say like, well, this is what he is and he's got no upside. So you're just drafting a known commodity and he's never going to get better than that. You want the ability to develop a little bit, project a little bit, but not too much. There's this perfect sweet spot. So what is it, Rich? 8 turns, 9 turns, 20 turns of the cube to get it finished or polished or ready or reach its potential. Anthony Richardson, if figured out, becomes the best player on the field in maybe any matchup. That's his upside. Now, how far away is he from that? Quite far. So you've got to think to yourself, am I smart enough to figure out 25 moves of a Rubik's Cube and get this guy to a point where he can be one of the best players in the NFL? It's this equation. It's this dance that the decision makers have to go on. And the reason that I like him at 3 right behind those guys is that his upside is so much higher than someone like, let's say, Will Levis, but he's going to go behind them because he's too many turns behind in terms of the Rubik's Cube. Richardson is a phenomenal player. The one thing I would say that is somewhat of a knock is that he's not consistently good. He's occasionally great, but he's not consistently good.
How much of that had to do with where he was, program in Florida? Because, again, that's the conversation about Richardson is the wins and losses in this past year.
Of course.
And, of course, he's in the same conference as Will Levis.
That's right.
Same conference as Bryce Young. Same conference as Hendon Hooker. And he was in 4th in that conversation, win-loss wise. Much.
The talent can supersede some of those questions. I will say, though, there were moments when you could tell the team was on his back and he was raising the level of all the boats. He was the tide. Bryce Young is constantly the tide. Everybody around him has to get better. He's going to pull you down the field, score in big moments. We've seen those moments with Richardson. We've seen those moments with C.J. Stroud. And for me, it's the mundane. Can you be really good with the mundane? I make this comment as well quite a bit. I think most throws for a quarterback, even at the NFL level, are on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of difficulties, 4s and 5s. There's you live in 4s and 5s, maybe some 6s, right? They're just not ultra difficult throws. Now, you got to process information, you got to be on time, and you got to do those sort of things. You've got to be exceptional at 4s, 5s, and 6s. You cannot miss them. You can't miss them.
Right.
He misses those throws sometimes. The difference is he can go to 9 and 10 where other guys can't.
also with his legs and things of that nature. And I do like your Rubik's Cube analogy very much.
I love it. See, this was like a tester, guys.
No. You can workshop your stuff on the Rich Eisen Show and with me anytime. Text me, call me, or show up here. But let me just add on to that. Is that part of solving a Rubik's Cube is whose hands is the cube in?
That's right.
Because you've seen the videos, right? Like if you hand me a Rubik's Cube, it will take me 15 years to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Okay, but you've seen the videos. You can hand the Rubik's Cube to somebody from one of the four corners of the earth. They flip it 3 times and it's done.
Yeah.
So give me the hands in whose Rubik's Cube named Anthony Richardson would be placed, who can figure it out. You're saying somebody's going to trade up to 3. Give me the team who you think they trade up to 3 with the new coach that they have, or the coach they already have, or the program they already have, the weapons they already have. Whose hands do you think Richardson's cube would be best placed?
I think that's 2 different answers.
Okay.
I think that the team that I do think the team that trades up is Indianapolis. I think they move up 1 spot. It's too easy. It's too clean. And Arizona would rather do that with Indianapolis, and the reason is because they can still sit there and get Will Anderson.
It would be the first overall pick in the draft.
That's right.
For anybody that doesn't, want a quarterback.
And they'll pick something up, and it won't be too much. It won't be too much to give up for Indianapolis, and it won't be too much to slide down for Arizona. Right. So I think that makes too much sense. Now, do I think that that's the best place for him? I'm not totally sure. I will say this, though. In the last 4 and 5 years, I've been pretty opinionated about quarterbacks.
Yes, you have.
And I will tell you, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've had to totally rethink and self-assess some of that, because I'm like, hold on, projects are working more now than they ever have in the NFL. It used to be in what let's call it old school football, without the modern style of RPOs and college style offenses kind of infiltrating the National Football League. Projects didn't work. They just didn't. Now they do. We forget Patrick Mahomes was a project. I remember the eyebrows raising when Andy Reid
we thought it was Deshaun Watson on our set in Philadelphia. That was
right.
The draft hall on the Rocky Steps, and Andy Reid's trading up, and in Philadelphia, it's clearly for Deshaun Watson. That's what we all thought on the set, from Mayock to DJ to CD you referred to, Charles Davis earlier. And it was Mahomes. And we're like,
Mahomes.
Okay.
And it was a project. Remember, he retreated in the pocket. No one had success out of that offense. Could it work? We don't know. He seems like too much of a gunslinger.
Yeah.
What I found out about Andy Reid and anybody that had ever touched Brett Favre is that that's what they saw in Patrick Mahomes early in his career. So he was a project. Jalen Hurts was a project coming out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, now he's the highest.
Now he's the highest paid player.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, same. Josh Allen, same. I mean, all of these guys had question marks, big question marks about what they were going to be at the next level, and they have worked out. And so I think there are teams and decision makers that are going to be much more aggressive in terms of the, quote, project than they have been in the past.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.